And joining us now is the mayor of Tucson, Arizona, Regina Romero. She is a member of the Harris-Walz Campaign National Advisory Board. Mayor, it's great seeing you. I thank you for being with us this morning. This is an incredibly close race in Arizona and this New York. Thank you. In this new poll, the vice president is up 2 points within the margin of error, but she's up 2 points. What does the vice president, you think, need to do in these final days of the campaign?
Well, exactly what she did yesterday. She was in Las Vegas with Univision talking to Latino voters, which is a really important demographic, both in Nevada and Arizona. She was here last night. I unfortunately did not see all of the Univision event, but because I was in Phoenix with the vice president. But voters right now, what we need is to hear from the vice president and Governor Walz. We need to make sure that we do what we do best, right? You just had your reporter talk about how we switched here in Arizona from a solid red state to a purple state because of SB 1070. We have to do what we did back then, which was knock on doors and call voters and make sure that we have face-to-face contact on the ground. And the Harris campaign has opened more than 10 offices in Arizona. And we're on the ground. We're talking to voters face to face and letting them know that our democracy is at stake. And you were just talking about immigration. In terms of the immigration plans, there's a world of difference. It's a stark choice that we have in front of us, especially for Latinos, that we care about immigration, but we want to make sure that it's safe, humane, and orderly. And we do not want to go back to the days of Joe Arpaio and Jan Brewer, where immigrants and people of color, especially brown people, were afraid of what would happen to them and their families. Were there to be, SB 1070 were to pass. The same thing that's happening right now. And so it's a choice between a border bill that Vice President Harris has and mass deportation that Donald Trump is offering.
No doubt that is the very clear policy of Donald Trump. That we know, right, Mayor? He has said he would create the largest deportation force in history, that millions would be deported. He is very clear on that. What I don't see, Mayor, is clarity on a lot of issues. I want to play for you, for example, part of what she said, the vice president, when she was asked about DACA at that town hall last night. Take a listen to this.
They should not have to live in fear, but should have an ability to be on a pathway to earn their citizenship. So it is one of my priorities, and I've worked on this in terms of Dreamers for many, many years, and I'll continue to fight for them.
And so, Mayor, just kind of going in on this, and I want your thoughts on it, because that border bill that is so often referred to, first of all, it would not have the majority of votes by Democrats in the Senate if it came up in the Senate, although that's not even a real possibility. But in that border bill, nothing on DACA, no immigration reform, money and an order that the wall be built on the southern border. There is a pathway to citizenship in that bill, but for Afghans who left Afghanistan after the withdrawal. So fundamentally changing the asylum system, by the way. So I'm just wondering, what is it that we have to hear from the vice president on specific issues that matter to millions of people? There are millions of mixed status immigration families in this country wanting to hear details more than just the border bill, which doesn't in any way deal with the 10, 11 million people who have been here for many of them for generations now and are living in uncertainty. Yesterday, what happened in New Orleans? DACA, where was that talked about? What is it that we need to hear?
Well, first and most importantly, what voters need to understand is that Democrats have been working for decades to introduce border bills in Congress. Congress refuses to do their job, and people around the country suffer because a lack of willingness from Republicans. We've tried this for decades, Jose. You know this very well. Democrats, time and time again, work across the aisle in a bipartisan fashion to make sure that we are presenting a solution to the problem for decades. And Republicans have refused to do their job because they want to use this issue as a wedge issue. Vice President Harris is trying to do her job and supporting something that senators and congressmen will support. And yet again, one more time, Republicans refuse to see that bill through because Trump told them that it would be better for them not to solve the issue that they're paid for by the American people to solve. And so Kamala Harris has a plan. She wants to work on Dreamers. She wants to work on the 11 million people that are here that have mixed status families. But, you know, the only thing that we hear from Donald Trump and Republicans is get them out, is mass deportation, is vilifying immigrants for their own political gain. That is disgusting, and people here in Arizona will see absolutely through it.
And you know what? You're absolutely right on that. There is a before and after in Arizona to SB 1070, to Joe Arpaio and how he would put migrants, people that have crossed, into open air jails at 105 and 110 degrees outside. You know, we don't forget that. We don't forget that he dressed them in pink and would parade them through the streets, cleaning up. But these things matter, so do specifics. Mayor Regina Romero, it's always a pleasure to see you. I thank you very much for being with us this morning.
Thank you so much, Jose. I really appreciate you.